Hey guys, welcome back for part 6 of Agamemnon. Okay, so let's begin. Oh look, Darla's wanting to be involved. She's wandered off. She's like, nah, actually I changed my mind. Okay, so we are on page 142 and we are looking at the line from, let's go from just at the bottom from 1031, just underneath that. So basically that's like right down the bottom where there's the scene directions, okay? And the scene directions are, Clytemnestra emerges from the palace and goes to Cassandra, impassive in the chariot. So what's happened is that obviously Agamemnon's come home. He's been welcomed almost to the point where it's a little bit, well, it's a lot of bit over the top. Laying down these rugs, these, beautiful red crimson rugs. Now, back in the day, it was quite funny because their concepts of colour were a little bit different to the way that we talk about colour now. When they look at the translation, it's hard to know whether they're talking about red, like blood red, which sometimes they refer to, or purple, because the colour purple didn't actually exist until about the 1700s. Not as in like it wasn't in the world, it was definitely in the world. It was just that I'm trying to think how to explain it, but like almost like they didn't know it existed, that they would either refer to it as like a pink or red, like a reddy kind of colour, or they would call it like a blue. So your more bluish purples were considered blue, and your more reddish purples, so like almost heading to maroon, were considered red. So interesting random fact. You're welcome. All these weird things that just like, as an adult, you've just like kind of like accumulated. But anyway, so they laid down all these red rugs or purple rugs to walk on, because she's like, no, Agamemnon, Clytemnestra is like, no, Agamemnon, you are so amazing that you shouldn't even walk on dirt anymore. Like, you should always walk on rugs. Like, beautiful, expensive, handmade rugs. That is so how awesome you are. And she, tries to lure him on this, and he's like, nah, I feel uncomfortable about it. It's kind of a bit much, isn't it? Like, it's a bit much. But Clytemnestra, ends up talking him into it, and basically like really leaning heavily on his ego and kind of going, hey, if it was Priam, the king of Troy, well, was king of Troy, now he's dead, wouldn't he do this? Like, if he'd beaten you, surely he would behave this way. He really trying to like pump up his ego to kind of go, you should do this, you should do this. Even though he knows that by doing this, it's going to be kind of offensive to the gods, that they're going to go, hey, are you like holding yourself in the same kind of hemisphere as us? Because you are not that good. Calm down. Excuse me, Della. Just helping herself onto the couch there. Don't mind her. So Clytemnestra kind of like lures him into doing this, even though she knows and he knows that the gods won't really like it. But he does it anyway because, he's full of pride. Anyway, the other thing to kind of keep in mind is that Agamemnon has also brought back a sex slave called Cassandra. Now, Cassandra is, she was a priestess in Troy, and was a daughter of Troy, one of the kind of royalty of Troy, and he brought her back as a prize to himself, and also to kind of rub it in Troy's face. So yeah. And so she brought back Cassandra, and he brings back Cassandra, and he doesn't even try and like hide the fact that he's been having this affair with Cassandra. Well, sorry, he's been sexually assaulting Cassandra this whole time. He doesn't hide that at all from Clytemnestra, even though Clytemnestra has like made this big show and dance about how like she's been so faithful these 10 years that he's been gone, like she's been so great. Now we find out later that's not true, that she's been cheating on him this whole time, but the point is more that like he's openly humiliating her, and that's a big no-no. So yeah, so anyway, Agamemnon goes inside and, you know, walks on the rugs and goes inside, and the chorus are like, I don't know why, but we just kind of feel kind of icky about this whole thing. We got a bad feeling. And then Clytemnestra is still standing outside, and looks at Cassandra, who is still standing in the chariot, looking terrified and not wanting to go in, because she doesn't want to be a slave, doesn't want to like go into that house and be a slave. And so Clytemnestra kind of reaches out to her. And so that's where we're going from. So we are at 10:30, I guess it'd be 10:32. And it says, Clytemnestra emerges from the palace and goes to Cassandra, who is impassive in the chariot. So she's just standing in the chariot, blank face, looking kind of terrified. And Clytemnestra says, won't you come inside? I mean you, Cassandra. Zeus in all his mercies wants you to share some victory libations with the house. The slaves are flocking. Come, lead them up the altar to the gods, who guards our dearest treasure. Down from the chariot. This is no time for pride. Why, even Heracles, they say, was sold into bondage long ago. He had to endure the bitter bread of the slaves. But if the yoke descends on you, be grateful for a master, born and reared in ancient wealth, those who reap a harvest past their hopes are merciless to their slaves. From us, you will receive what custom says is right. Okay, so what Clytemnestra is doing there is inviting her into the house and kind of going, look, you know, be grateful. Like, things could totally be a lot worse. Like, we're really rich, so like we don't really have, you don't really have to worry too much. Like, you'll get treated pretty well, like, considering even though you'll be a slave, you'll still be treated pretty well. Like, you know, count your blessings. Which, you know, if I was Cassandra and been stolen from my home and taken as a slave, I don't know whether that would be like enough for comfort for me to go, yeah, sure, okay, yeah, no worries, let's go inside. And what Clytemnestra is actually inviting her to do is to go and have some celebratory drinks with all the people who have killed her family and friends, to celebrate the fact that they killed her family and friends. Look, I would say for me, that'd be a hard pass. Hard pass on that one. But, you know, thanks for the offer. Anyway, so Cassandra kind of continues standing there and not wanting to move. And the leader says, it's you she's speaking to. It's all too clear. You're caught in the nets of doom. Obey if you can obey, unless you cannot bear to. Okay, so the leader there is giving advice, and he's kind of going, look, if you can swallow your pride and step off this chariot and go and party, well, pretend to party with these people, you know, that might make your life easier. And Clytemnestra, who is, you know, like she's trying to be nice, but it's very hard to be a nice person about it when you're not a nice person. And she says, unless she's like a swallow, possessed of her own barbaric song, dark and strange and dark, I speak directly as I can. She must obey. So, you know, she's saying, well, what, doesn't she speak my language? Like, can she not understand me? You know, I've spoken directly. She has to obey. And the leader tries to encourage Cassandra and says, go with her. make the best of it. She's right. Step down from the seat. Obey her. So, really trying to help Cassandra, but Cassandra is like almost paralyzed with fear. Now, Clytemnestra is getting fed up pretty quickly. Again, it's hard being a nice person when you're not a nice person. I'd know. And so she's getting fed up now. And she says, "Do it now. I have no time to spend outside. Already the victims have crowded the hearth, the navel stone, to bless this day of joy I never hoped to see." This day of joy is the day, again, to celebrate the death of Cassandra's family. And if you want to taste our mystic rites, come now. If my words can't reach you, then she turns to the leader and she says, give her a sign, one of her exotic hand signs, do something, make her understand. And the leader says, "I think the stranger needs an interpreter, someone clear. She's like a wild creature, fresh caught." The leader understands that she's, almost paralyzed with fear, and almost in shock, yeah? Which is fair enough. She's just kind of seen her whole city, her whole life, family, friends, everyone she cares about die, and then be captured and taken. Hi, Dalla. Be captured and taken as a sex slave back to a foreign land where no one speaks the same language as you. And yeah, fair. I think I'd probably be a little worried about the whole thing. Yeah. And so Clytemnestra, she's had a gutful. Doesn't want to keep dealing with this. She says she's mad. Her evil genius murmurings in her ear. She comes from a city, fresh caught. City. They kind of consider Troy as this barbaric land. She must learn to take a cutting bridle before she foams her spirit off in blood. And that's the last I waste on her contempt. Right, so she kind of says, look, she better get used to being a slave. She's got to deal with the cutting bridle. A bridle is the thing that you put in a horse's mouth. And it you use it with the reins to kind of pull them back. So she's she better get used to wearing a bridle, being a slave, being told what to do, because that's her lot now. So tell her to suck it up, basically, is what she's saying. And that's the last I waste on her contempt. The other thing to note in this little speech is the bit where she says, she's mad, her evil genius murmuring in her ears. She's talking about Cassandra's talent or gift, which is, remember we talked about it before, that she can see the past and the future. So yeah, she's talking about that, and she calls it a madness because, again, the thing about Cassandra's gift is that even though she has it, no one believes it. That's part of the gift. Well, that's the curse of the gift. Anyway, so Clytemnestra is sick of it, sick of her. That's the last thing I say to her. That's the last I waste on her contempt. And she wheels around back to re-enter the palace. And then the leader is left with Cassandra. Cassandra and the chorus. So the leader steps out. And Cassandra is kind of still standing there, in shock. And so the leader kind of steps in to kind of, coax her down from the chariot. And the leader says, "Not I. I pity her. I will be gentle. Come, poor thing, leave the empty chariot. Of your own free will, try on the yoke of fate." Okay, so this is worth kind of circling and annotating. So the leader is being, I would write, sympathetic next to the leader. And the other thing that I think is interesting is it says, "Of your own free will, try on the yoke of fate." Now, just to give a bit of context of this word yoke. Yoke is the thing that you would use if you were using cows to drag something heavy, like a cart. What you would have on the cow so that the cow could kind of carry the cart is this big plank of wood that would kind of rest on its shoulders, and then the harness would kind of be hooked onto the yoke, the bit of wood. That's the yoke that you would kind of harness, and then they would be able to pull whatever it is they needed to pull. So that was called a yoke. So saying that she needs to try on the yoke of fate is saying, like, try on the kind of like heavy, the heavy burden of fate. Yeah, that kind of weighs you down. So again, it's interesting because we've got this discussion about fate again, that you don't make decisions for your own life, that it's already kind of designed for you. So yeah, I would write in big letters fate next to that. And then Cassandra kind of like loses it, and she's like, ah, Earth, Mother, curse of the earth, Apollo, Apollo. And then the leader says, why cry Apollo? He's not the god to call with sounds of mourning. Mourning as in boo-hoo, not mourning as in ah. So she's crying out for the god Apollo, and the leader's like, why are you doing that? Like, Apollo doesn't care about dead people, and surely that's why you're upset, because your mum's dead. But Cassandra can't hear him, and she's just like, ah, Earth, Mother, rape of Earth, Apollo, Apollo. And then the leader says, again, this is a bit awkward. It's a bad omen. She cries for a god who wants no part in grief. So he's like, what's she doing? And then Cassandra steps from the chariot and looks slowly towards the rooftops of the palace. And she speaks, God of the long road, Apollo, Apollo, my destroyer, you destroy me once, destroy me twice. The leader says, she's about to sense her own ordeal, I think. Slave that she is, the god lives on inside her. God of the iron marches, Apollo, Apollo, my destroyer, where have you led me now? What house? The leader responds, the house of Atreus and his sons. Really, don't you know? It's true. See for yourself. So what's happening there is, like, it seems like Cassandra's calling out for Apollo. Now, the reason she's calling out for Apollo is because Apollo is the one that cursed her, or gave her her gift, but also cursed her. And so she's kind of calling out to him and going, this is your fault. You know, I'm seeing all these awful things, and, you know, you're cursing me again. You've destroyed me once, now you're destroying me twice. And then she starts having a vision, okay? And it says, and no, the house that hates God, the echoing womb of guilt, kinsmen torturing kinsmen, severed heads, slaughtered heroes, soil streaming blood. The leader responds, a keen hound, this stranger, trailing murder, and murder she will find. Cassandra, see my witnesses. I trust to them, to the babies, wailing, skewered on the sword, their flesh charred, the father gorging on their parts. The leader says, we heard your fame as a seer, but no one looks for seers in Argos. So what's happening there is she's kind of getting all these horrific visions of what's going to happen in Argos's future. And it doesn't sound great, does it? You know, babies skewered on swords with their flesh charred, and their fathers, you know, feasting on their flesh, and, you know, severed heads and torturing kinsmen. Look, it doesn't sound like there's a lot of good gonna happen for Argos in the future. So she's kind of witnessing all this. She's having a vision of all of this. And the leader and the chorus are not quite sure whether they're ready to believe her yet. But the more she talks about it, the more they do believe her. And these are really the only people that have ever believed her. which, you know, is sad because it's kind of like she's predicting all this horrible stuff and they finally believe her, but there's nothing they can do about it. So the leader says, Cassandra says, "Oh no, what horror, what new plot, new agony is this? It's growing, massing deep in the house, a plot, a monstrous thing. To crush the loved ones, no, there is no cure, and rescues far away." And the leader says, "I can't read these signs. I knew the first. The city rings with them. You God-forsaken, you do this. Lord of your bed, you bathe him. His body glistens. Then how to tell the climax? Comes so quickly. See, hand over hand shoots out, hauling ropes, then lunge." Okay, so she's kind of seeing these awful things. And if you go back to 1105, that little phrase there where it says, "It's growing, massing deep in," I want you to underline this, "growing, massing deep in the house, a plot, a monstrous thing, to crush the loved ones, no, there is no cure, and rescues far away." So there, Cassandra's talking about what's going to happen in a moment, which is she and Agamemnon are going to be murdered by Clytemnestra and her lover. So she's kind of seeing the first inklings of her own murder. And same with down underneath where we're at 1110. She's talking about, when she's saying you God-forsaken, you'd do this, she's talking about Clytemnestra. The lord of your bed, your husband, you'd bathe him, you'd look after him, and then you'd kill him. How could you do that? So she's horrified in the first inklings of what she's getting about what's going to happen. And then the leader says, the leader kind of thinks that she's a bit cuckoo for Cocoa Pops. And she says, he says, "Still lost, her riddles, her dark words of God, I'm groping, helpless." And she's still like in mid vision, and she's going, no, look there. What's that? Some net flung out of hell. No, she is the snare, the bedmate, the deathmate, murder's strong right arm. Let the insatiate discord in the race rear up and shriek, "Avenge the victim, stone them dead." So again, we're talking about what is going to happen to Agamemnon. So it says she is the snare. Again, I want you underlining, she is the snare, the bedmate, deathmate, murder's strong right arm, as in she's the one orchestrating this murder. So she's actually picturing what's going to happen to Agamemnon, and she's picturing that what's her name? Clytemnestra is going to shriek, "Avenge the victim, stone them dead." Now, them is Agamemnon and Cassandra. Who is the victim, though? Avenge the victim. It's the daughter. It's the daughter. Yeah. That after all this time, Clytemnestra is still looking to get justice for her daughter. And then the leader says, "What fury is this? Why rouse it? Lift its wailing through the house. I hear you and lose hope." As in, you're frightening us. Why are you saying these crazy, scary stuff? And then the chorus steps in. Remember that the leader is part of the chorus. So the chorus steps in and says, "Drop by drop at heart, the gold of life ebbs out. We are the old soldiers. Wounds will come with the crushing sunset of our lives. Death is close and quick." As in, like, we understand death. Death is already close to us. Because remember, the chorus is made up of, like, old dudes. So they're saying, death, I feel it too, death is close. So they're kind of starting to believe her. And Cassandra says, look out! I drag the great bull from its mate. A thrash of robes, she traps him, writhing. Black horn glints, twists, she gores through him. And now he buckles, look, the bath swirls red. There's stealth and murder in the cauldron, do you hear? Right, so again, we're getting descriptions of what this murder will be like. And I'd underline, a thrash of robes, she traps him, she being Clytemnestra. Writhing, black horn glints, twists, she gores him through. So we're assuming that gore means like, when you're gored, it's like a bull's horn like stabs you. That's called being gored. Gore, gore. To be gored, is to have a bull stab you with its horn. Very specific. But she's saying she gores him, as in she stabs him. And so she's having this horrible vision. And the leader says, I'm no judge. I've little skill with oracles. Oracles are people who can look into the future. I've little skill with oracles, but even I know the danger when I hear it. Okay, so I want you to underline that as well. I'm no judge. I've little skill with oracles, but even I know danger when I hear it. I want you to underline those, and I want you to, again, write fate. That they are starting to believe her. But there's nothing really they can do because it's going to happen like now. So yeah. Then the chorus say, what good are oracles to men? Words, more words, and hurt comes on us, endless words. And a seer's techniques have brought us terror and truth. And so they're kind of saying, well, what's the point of a seer, an oracle? They see into the future. They give us all these words, but there's nothing we can do about it. They just make us scared of what's to come. Fate is fate. There's nothing we can do about it. So that's worth underlining as well, especially when it says, what good are the oracles to men? The hurt comes on us, endless words, and a seer's technique have brought us terror and truth. That it just kind of tells us what's going to happen, but it doesn't really stop it. And then Cassandra, still kind of wigging out and still having a vision, she says, the agony! I'm breaking. Fate so hard that pain that floods my voice is mine alone. Why have you brought me here, tormented as I am? Why, unless to die with him, why else? So she's kind of wigging out, and she's like, why do I have to go through all of this horrible stuff and see all this horrible stuff? Why would I have to do this? Unless I'm just supposed to die with him, which, obviously she's not a big fan of. And the leader and the chorus say, mad with rapture, God speeds you on to the song, the death song, like a nightingale that broods on sorrow, mourns her son, her life, inspired with grief for him. She lilts and shrills, dark bird that lives for night. Okay, so that description is really interesting about the nightingale, like the nightingale that broods on sorrow, mourns her son, and is inspired with grief for him, that she lilts and shrills. That's kind of describing Clytemnestra quite well, that, she's brooded on sorrow, hasn't she? She's kind of, for 10 years, she's kind of been sitting there in that palace brooding on her sorrow. And she mourns, well, she doesn't mourn her son, she mourns her daughter. And inspired by grief for him. She's inspired by grief for her daughter. So I just kind of put a little circle around that and write metaphor for Cly. Then Cassandra, she says, oh, the nightingale, oh, for a song, a fate like hers. The gods gave her life of ease, swathed in her wings, no tears, no wailing. The knife waits for me. They'll splay me on the iron's double edge. So she kind of you know, is like, I'd like to be a nightingale, please. A nightingale would be great in comparison to what's going to happen to me, which, you know, they're just going to cut me open. All right. What we might do is we might stop there because I don't like to go more than 30 minutes. So we're going to stop there. What I want you to do now is head to Simon, to your class tasks, and answer the couple of questions that I've left you on this. And it'd be great to know how you're going with this, whether you're finding these videos helpful or whether you need me to do more of something or less of something. That, you know, tell me what you need, and so that I can, I guess, better support you and, you know, make it more fun, or like, I don't know, whatever. I'd love some tips. So send me an email if you think of anything cool that I could add or do that would make it better or more interesting. Okay. I'll see you next lesson. Bye.